The afternoon sun hung low over the Red Sea as American aircraft maintained their routine patrol patterns across one of the world's most contested waterways. For months, military planners had warned that the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. Merchant ships continued to transit the region. Naval task forces remained on station. Surveillance aircraft flew daily missions. Tensions were high, but direct attacks on manned American aircraft had remained relatively rare. That would soon change. A U.S. Navy strike fighter was flying a combat air patrol mission several miles offshore, monitoring activity along the coastline. The pilot had performed the same mission dozens of times before. The skies appeared calm. Radar scopes showed no immediate threats. Then a warning tone shattered the silence inside the cockpit. An enemy radar had locked onto the aircraft. Within seconds, the pilot's threat display illuminated with multiple warning symbols. Somewhere beyond the mountains, a missile battery had activated and was preparing to engage. The launch came moments later. A plume of smoke erupted from a concealed position near the coast as a surface-to-air missile accelerated toward the sky. Its rocket motor burned with blinding intensity, pushing the weapon faster and faster as it climbed toward its target. Inside the cockpit, the pilot immediately initiated defensive procedures. The fighter rolled sharply and descended, forcing the missile's tracking system to constantly recalculate its interception path. Electronic warfare systems began transmitting powerful signals designed to confuse enemy radars. But the missile kept coming. Ground operators guiding the weapon continued feeding targeting information. Every second brought it closer. The aircraft responded with another violent maneuver. Countermeasure dispensers erupted along the fuselage, scattering dozens of decoys behind the jet. Bright flares burned across the sky while metallic chaff drifted through the air, creating false targets intended to lure the missile away. For a brief moment, it appeared to work. The missile hesitated. Then it corrected course. The weapon had not completely lost track. What followed was a race measured not in minutes but in seconds. The pilot pushed the aircraft to its limits. Warning alarms echoed through the cockpit. Altitude dropped rapidly. Speed increased. The distance between hunter and prey continued shrinking. Then the fighter's electronic warfare suite launched its most aggressive response. Powerful jamming signals flooded the electromagnetic spectrum, attacking the missile's guidance network and disrupting communication between the launcher and the weapon. Suddenly the missile veered. Instead of striking the aircraft, it passed harmlessly behind before exploding hundreds of meters away. The pilot had survived. But the encounter revealed something deeply concerning. The missile system responsible for the attack was far more capable than intelligence analysts had expected. And somewhere on the ground, enemy operators were preparing to fire again. Less than an hour later, another American aircraft entered the area. This time it was an unmanned surveillance drone conducting reconnaissance over suspected supply routes. Unlike a fighter jet, the drone lacked the speed and agility needed to escape through violent maneuvering alone. Its survival depended on detection and deception. As the aircraft monitored vehicle movements below, ground crews hidden among rugged terrain identified the drone and prepared another launch. The missile left its rail with a flash of fire. Operators monitoring the drone immediately received the alert. Automatic defensive systems activated. Countermeasures deployed. The drone began climbing while simultaneously altering course to complicate the missile's tracking solution. For several tense moments, nobody knew whether the aircraft would survive. Unlike the fighter earlier in the day, the drone could not simply outrun the threat. The incoming missile closed the distance rapidly. Ground controllers watched telemetry streams update in real time. The gap narrowed. Then narrowed again. Suddenly the missile detonated. The explosion occurred close enough to damage the aircraft but not close enough to destroy it. Fragments tore through portions of the wing structure. Sensors registered impacts. Control systems compensated. Against the odds, the drone remained airborne. Hours later it limped back to base. Maintenance crews discovered extensive damage. The aircraft had come far closer to destruction than anyone initially realized. The attacks immediately triggered a wave of activity across military headquarters throughout the region. Analysts reviewed radar recordings. Intelligence specialists examined launch locations. Commanders debated possible responses. The conclusion was unanimous. The missile crews responsible could not be allowed to conduct another attack. As darkness settled across the region, preparations began for a carefully coordinated retaliation. Warships adjusted their positions. Aircraft were armed. Targeting packages were updated. Satellite imagery flowed into command centers. Signals intelligence teams searched for emissions that might reveal the locations of additional missile batteries. By midnight, planners had identified multiple targets. Mobile launchers. Radar sites. Weapons storage facilities. Command centers. The objective was not merely punishment. It was to dismantle an entire network before another attack could occur. Shortly after midnight, the first phase began. Far offshore, guided missile destroyers received execution orders. Crew members moved with practiced efficiency. Vertical launch cells opened. Moments later, missiles erupted skyward. The weapons climbed into the darkness before turning toward the coastline hundreds of kilometers away. At nearly the same time, strike aircraft launched from a carrier operating in international waters. Their mission was significantly larger than a simple retaliatory strike. This was a coordinated operation designed to overwhelm defenses from multiple directions simultaneously. As the aircraft approached their targets, electronic attack platforms began suppressing enemy radar coverage. Signals vanished from monitoring screens. Communications became unreliable. Confusion spread among defenders. Then the first explosions appeared. Radar installations disappeared beneath towering columns of smoke. Storage depots erupted in secondary detonations. Missile launchers attempting to relocate were struck before they could escape. Throughout the night, wave after wave of precision strikes targeted key components of the network. Some weapons attacked command facilities. Others focused on logistics hubs and transportation routes. The goal was systematic degradation rather than a single dramatic blow. By dawn, reconnaissance assets began surveying the results. What they found exceeded expectations. Multiple launch systems had been destroyed. Several radar sites were no longer operational. Large quantities of ammunition had been eliminated. Most importantly, the network responsible for the attacks had been severely disrupted. Yet military planners understood a difficult reality. Air defense systems can be rebuilt. Missiles can be replaced. New launch sites can emerge. The operation had achieved its immediate objective, but the broader conflict remained far from resolved. For commanders on both sides, the events of that day served as a reminder of how quickly routine patrols can transform into major military confrontations. One missile launch had triggered an entire chain of events. A fighter narrowly escaped destruction. A drone returned home damaged but alive. Warships launched retaliatory strikes. Aircraft conducted coordinated attacks. And an already volatile region moved one step closer to a wider confrontation. The next encounter could happen tomorrow. Or it could happen tonight. And when it does, both sides will be watching the skies.